Welcome back to Marvelous Videos. I'm Rylan. First things first, we need to get our basics cleared about the most famous female Autobot in all the Transformers franchise. Yes, we are talking about Arcee, who was first introduced in Nelson Shin's 1986 animated sci-fi action flick entitled The Transformers: The Movie. But there's no denying that her character primarily used to transform into a four-wheeled vehicle, but further incarnations of her have her transformed into two-wheeled motorcycles. Please note that the character, in terms of design, personality, as well as alternate mode, differs depending on the very continuity that it's been in. Now, when it comes to the live-action movies, however, Arcee has already graced fans with her brief appearance in both Michael Bay's Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen and Travis Knight's Bumblebee. So, with the 7th installment in the Transformers film series, Transformers: Rise of the Beasts, hitting theaters next June, well, Arcee is now, more than ever, ready to take down her enemies once again. We suggest that you stay tuned till the end of this video to learn everything you need to know about Arcee. It's going to be an interesting, in-depth explanation of this character, so you better be ready for it. And, well, without further delay, let's dive right into it. Actually, before we get into our explanation, we do have just one very small request. If you like our content, then please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is just a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thanks. Now, let's begin. Who is Arcee? Please don't make any blunders of judging Arcee simply by her gender. Agreed that she is a female, but when it comes to her skill and ferocity, these particular traits of hers are more than often misconstrued by the Decepticons, and that is primarily due to her gender. Mind you, she is absolutely ruthless, and quite deadly we might add. One who's not only adept at hand-to-hand combat, but also, if not the best, then certainly one of the best sharpshooters to ever exist.
Get out of here!
Good idea!
For those of you who are wondering what is the main reason behind her ferocity, well, she cares a lot for her fellow Autobots, and the humans that come under her protection. She is aware how delicate her organic companions are. She knows how malevolent the Decepticons are, and also what they're capable of. Please know that Arcee will go to every extent when it comes to defending her peers, such as Springer and Hot Rod. This might come as a surprise to you, but Arcee, at times, happens to be the sister of Galvatron and the great aunt of Rat Trap. Of course, she has been seen at times flirting with Hot Rod, but in actuality, she's either married to Greenlight or Aileron in some universe or the other. In addition to all of these, Arcee has also been shown entering a symbiotic relationship with the human Daniel Witwicky, and being a motherly protector for the young boy. Here's putting stress on the Transformers cartoon and focusing chiefly on the storyline of Arcee. Now, we have already mentioned this before, but the character of Arcee was originally introduced in the 1986 movie as Daniel Witwicky's protector, and the love interest of fellow Autobot Hot Rod. But her character continued to make appearances in the 3rd season of Transformers animated TV series. Well, of course, the American cartoon changed things up a bit, but we did like to shed some light on Arcee's relationship status with Springer, just to start things off. Anyway, coming back to the storyline, Arcee is shown to be among the few Autobots who have survived Megatron's savage assault on the city, and assembles a small army that was sent to engage Unicron, who of course was threatening Cybertron at that particular time. There was a time when Galvatron, or in other words, the minion of Unicron, attacked, and Arcee was almost left behind. She, along with Ultra Magnus and his mini attack force, were able to resist the attack, and even made friends with the inhabitants of the planet Junction, thereby taking their aid and reuniting with their lost Autobot companions, and eventually fighting their way. Just note that Hot Rod was ultimately able to open the power of the Matrix and destroy Unicron. Also, throughout the whole course of events, Arcee's foremost priority was to protect the young human Daniel Witwicky, the latter having wound up along with her on the adventure. Anyway, so after the Matrix chose Hot Rod and he became Rodimus Prime, or should we say the new leader of the Autobots, Arcee carried on working closely and being one of his closest warriors. She was also one to have helped combat a surprise attack on the first intergalactic game, known as the Galactic Olympics. With Spike Witwicky, Cup, and Ultra Magnus kidnapped in the confusion, Arcee joined Springer to hunt down the alien mercenary, the Skuxoid. Upon learning that the ancient and bizarre race of Quintessence was accountable for the abduction, Arcee took part in the rescue mission on Quintessa. Needless to say, she ended up saving the whole trio, just seconds before the entire planet blew up. The explosion sent Arcee and her friends to an unknown planet called Goo 8739-B. The group was seen stranded there till the time the inhabitants of the planet Junkion came to rescue them. While the character of Arcee was momentarily seen in the aftermath, it goes without saying that she returned to Cybertron along with the others, and also took part in the battle when Galvatron ended up conducting a full-scale attack on the planet to assume his leadership. Had it not been for Arcee, the Quintessence would have been successful in reviving the body of Optimus Prime and using it as some kind of a sleeper agent in order to trap the rest of the Autobots. Arcee was later seen tagging along with a unit that was sent after Galvatron and his troops infiltrated a secret chamber on Cybertron. Of course, this was a Quintessent trap, but only this time, the Decepticons were tricked into setting free the Quintessent's most dangerous experiments, the Transorganics, and their most supreme member, known as the Dweller. For those of you who are wondering what these Transorganics and who the Dweller is, well, the former happens to be the first creation of the Quintessence. Beasts that are huge, even by Transformer standards. They're also violent, uncontrollable, and they are only known for destruction. Speaking of the Dweller, it is a giant leech, capable of transforming all Transformers into energy vampires. Arcee and Ultra Magnus were not only able to evade from there, but also to warn both Rodimus Prime and Perceptor on time to put an end to the Dweller and turn all the Transformers back to their normal selves.
Chew on this!
Another notable adventure for Arcee includes the time when she, along with Springer, Rodimus Prime, and Ultra Magnus, became the very targets of the crime lord, Victor Drath. Not only were the 4 Autobots captured, but they had their minds transplanted into synthetic human bodies. Of course, the quartet managed to escape, with Arcee somehow making it back to the Autobot city in order to warn their comrades that their very bodies were going to be used to blow up the entire city. No one believed her, because they didn't realize that Arcee was in a synthetic human body, and instead, she was put inside a detention cell. But thank goodness for the duo of Ultra Magnus and Springer, who were able to thwart Drath's wicked plan, and eventually, all the 4 Autobots were returned back to their respective and rightful bodies. We know that we've already put emphasis on the powerful maternal connection between Arcee and Daniel before, but the series is where it starts to get strengthened even more, with Galvatron attempting to use the key to the reservoir of plasma energy so as to release the cataclysmic power. Arcee, along with the rest, managed to snatch the key and go as far away to the distant planet Nebulos. But upon reaching there, they become entangled in the Nebulon struggle for independence against their own oppressors, known as the Hive. The Autobots joined hands with the Nebulons and developed the Headmaster and Target Master processes in order to fight not only the Hive, but also the Decepticons, who would track them down there. Arcee also went to the extent of binary bonding with a fatally injured Daniel, as the latter required an exosuit to survive. The duo proved quite effective, now that they were binarily bonded, but while trying to escape, they were captured by Scorponok and also held as prisoners. Thanks to Spikewit Wiki and Cerebros for being able to break them out of their cell, as well as Decepticon City, just before the whole city was blown out.
Solar energy restored Cybertron.
Daniel, are you all right? Now that you're here, Arcee.
Arcee, amazing storyline in the comic series. We will begin with the Marvel Comics continuity first. In an alternate future, set in the year 1995, Arcee was built by the Autobots as some kind of goodwill gesture to win over the angry feminists who thought that the Autobots were being sexist for not having any females on their squad. After numerous attempts to make them understand that robots had no gender in the first place, Optimus Prime eventually surrendered to their demands and ordered the creation of a new Autobot to appease them. But when Arcee landed at the public ceremony, her very structure and form enraged the audience that Prime had planned to placid. The Decepticons attacked, and although Prime warned Arcee to stay back, the latter single-handedly took care of everything. And by that, we mean that she made the Decepticons retreat. Next, at the opening of Autobot City in 2004, Arcee protected several human diplomats from harm when a squad of Decepticons were being held by Shockwave, instigating an ambush in the hopes of destroying the Autobot-human relations on a permanent basis by slaughtering the diplomats present there at the convention. Arcee was also there when the Decepticons launched another attack against the Autobot City in 2005. This was precisely when she and Springer had the outpost changed into a defensive mode, but in spite of that, the Decepticons were able to breach the walls. Of course, the Autobots were able to drive Megatron along with his troops away, but that did cost them. Optimus was gravely injured, and he was left with no other choice but to pass on the matrix of leadership to Ultra Magnus. Then, there came a time when Hot Rod acquired the matrix of leadership, and he was back to being Rodimus Prime. Now, Arcee and Hot Rod had been quite friendly before, but somehow, after the latter's rise to prime status in the year 2006, the duo began to drift apart. While she did remain stationed at the Autobot City, she started becoming disinterested towards her duties. It was in the year 2008 when Arcee made up her mind all of a sudden to be a bit daring and decided to ditch her duties altogether. So, after a speedy drive through the countryside, she came back to the base, only to discover that it was under siege by the Quintessence. This led to Arcee being buttonholed, incapacitated, and intentionally positioned as some kind of bait, so that she would catch the attention of Rodimus right away. Of course, things happened as planned, and Rodimus rushed to help Arcee out. With him trying to use the Matrix in order to heal Arcee, the latter did her best to warn them of the whole trap, but it was already too late. This led to the Matrix being stolen by the Quintessence, and Rodimus Prime was back to being just Hot Rod. Arcee, in spite of her grisly wounds, was back on her feet, and she aided Hot Rod in a last-ditch effort to foil the very plans of the invaders. Hot Rod eventually awakened the Metroplex, which in turn led to the destruction of the Quintessent troop. Witnessing Hot Rod recover the Matrix and hold his own without the power of the Matrix restored back her very faith in her commander. Arcee was then seen next locating Soundwave as well as the Terrificons on Earth in the year 2009. The latter had intentions of using a laser bore in order to leech energy right from the planet's core. The Autobots were able to destroy the drill, and they came back to Autobot City only to face a much more significant menace, a time rift threatening to destroy almost 20 years of history. Apparently, Galvatron had spent months back in the 20th century, and this had Arcee, Rodimus, and many other Autobots going back in time to the year 1989 to bring him back. But sadly, the Autobots of this timeline misinterpreted them as imposters and even attempted to kill them. So, Arcee was severely mangled by the Dinobots, and had it not been for Goldbug, who explained that they were travelers from the future, things would have taken a terrible course of direction. Arcee managed to survive, and in due course, the time rift ended up devouring Galvatron completely, thereby putting an end to the temporal contortion. Arcee, along with the rest of the Autobots, came back to their timeline, only to discover that it had been reset. This means the Galvatron never really time jumped. As a matter of fact, he had alternatively destroyed Cybertron. Arcee and the rest tried their very best to adjust the things that weren't really in their favor. Galvatron did his best to drive Rodimus Prime into a killing frenzy, with the hopes of tainting the Matrix via its host. Arcee tried her very best to remind Rodimus of the real values of an Autobot leader, and while she was able to talk him down, the Autobots were coerced to leave their home world. Arcee was next seen joining forces with an Autobot team while escaping to Earth in order to regroup. With the ship's retro rockets getting disabled by the Matrix-imprisoned Unicron-possessed Rodimus, Arcee, along with Kup, made their way to the damaged systems through the air ducts of the ship. While Arcee was successful in repairing the wrecked machinery, she could not stop the unavoidable crash landing. With the ship hitting the ground and their possessed leader coming towards them to attack, it was Arcee who had her ruthless side on display, going the whole extent of advocating to use lethal force if needed on him. Upon realizing that Unicron had to be stopped no matter what, Kup decided to join hands with Arcee, but the latter changed his mind when Unicron's attack came to a sudden halt. They realized that Rodimus was fighting back, but with Unicron slaughtering Strafe in the process, Arcee asserted that Unicron was just faking things, so he could trap them into a fake sense of security. As far as Kup was concerned, he thought otherwise, and ripped the Matrix out of Rodimus's chest. Of course, this set Rodimus free from the control of the Unicron, but honestly speaking, it didn't really put an end to the threat. As part of the comic continuities that we are exploring here today, we will now be digging into the Beast Wars cartoon. Here, Wheelie and Daniel, the latter mind you, now being an adult, had sacrificed their very lives during the battle against a multitude of Nightbirds, while trying to put an end to the threat. No wonder the death of Daniel took a severe toll on Arcee. Not only did she cut herself off from the world, but with time, she isolated herself from her friends and disappeared deeper within Cybertron. In fact, there was even a time when she transformed into a biomechanical spider and simultaneously learned the ways of crystallocution as well as Takedo, all whilst hiding away. About hundreds of stellar cycles later, Predacon Megatron came back from Earth's past to destroy Cybertron with his own personal army of Viacons. Hot Rod, who is now addressed as Rodimus, formed a new team with a special task force known as the Wreckers. Of course, he wished to have Arcee on the team, but the latter was still too upset by her traumatic past. However, she was moved by the words of the Wrecker Fractal. Unbeknownst to Rodimus's Wreckers, they were followed by two Viacon generals, who not only instigated a battle, but also had fractal experience in near-death situation. Arcee, not ready to lose anyone anymore, used her spark in order to save Fractal, and converted her into a transmetal body. Next, she made up her mind to leave with the rest of the Wreckers, but not before defeating an enormous Viacon army. However, Devcon, the Autobot bounty hunter, snuck aboard the old Autobot shuttle and ambushed some of the group. Devcon, in spite of his smaller Viacon body, managed to get the better of Arcee, with their ship hitting the ground on their Oracle-given station, which happened to be the secluded planet of Arca 9. Arcee stayed behind on the ship to repair the damage caused by another mysterious saboteur, one who turned out to be a fellow Wrecker, Cyclonus. Speaking of Cyclonus, he was successful in stealing the Divine Light, an ancient artifact that the Wreckers were desperately looking for, and came back to his true master, the gangster Cyrotech. Dispirited, Arcee and the Wreckers made their way towards another planet, as directed by their spiritually inspired leader, Primal Prime. Upon landing on a tiny ice planet, a small scout team, one that included Arcee, was sent to inspect the planet. Upon searching for hours, they bumped into quintessence scientist Al-Badur. While Arcee was gearing herself up with her weapon, Primal Prime told her to lower the weapon. It appeared that the scientist was more like a welcome source of information, especially in regards to their quest. But before they could all leave the planet, they were ambushed by a swarm of Sharkticons, sent by Cyrotech. The duo of Arcee and Rodimus bonded while fighting the Sharkticons, and defeated the voracious beings. It was after that Al-Badur elucidated the group, stating to them that the Divine Light was an ancient quintessent piece of technology, one that sanctioned them to tap directly into the very power of Primus. But now, Cyrotech had laid hands on it, and that was a major problem. Upon returning back to Cybertron, they realized that their homeworld had changed during their absence into some kind of transorganic paradise. The Quintessence grabbed the opportunity to take over the planet, but Primal Prime guaranteed Arcee and the others that it was Cyrotech who was their primary concern. Primal Prime was seen leaving with a few in order to locate Cyrotech. As for Arcee and the others, they were given the responsibility of taking the injured to someplace safe, before joining the defense forces on the ground. However, their shuttle suffered heavy damage, and Arcee was left with no other options but to abandon the ship with the rest, while grabbing Fractal's body and whatever life support she could grab. Dismissing the orders of Primal Prime, she proposed that they find Cyrotech, and then aid the Wreckers in defeating him. The group was also joined by Cheater on the way. Upon finding the battleground between Cyrotech and Sentinel Maximus, Arcee willingly set aside Fractal, along with her life support, in order to join the fight. Not only did she help Devcon crush Cyrotech's transmuted pet Tro, but also resorted to her web lines to hold the creature in place so that Devcon could easily target it and shoot. Next, with Cyclonius and Rodimus vanishing underneath some rubble, Arcee, a magically repaired Fractal, and others went looking, or should we say digging for him, only to discover Night Scream, Botanica, and Arcee's nephew, Rat Trap. They also found Rodimus eventually, who goes without saying was in some pretty bad shape, having battled almost to the death with Cyclonus. Next, Arcee was seen following the instructions of Al-Badur, along with the others in order to defeat Cyrotech, and aided in directing the very battle between Sentinel Maximus and Cyrotech to some chamber, which was situated deeper within Cybertron. With the group arriving at the location, Arcee started having a bad feeling about it, and soon realized that the place was a quintessent banishment chamber. To top things off, Al-Badur had activated the containment shield within, locking himself, Sentinel Maximus, and Cyrotech inside a force field bubble. Rodimus stood up, despite his weakened state, to deal with the situation. Arcee knew very well that doing so would kill him, but he was adamant. Both Rodimus and Cheater were then seen resorting to the very skills to drain Cyrotech of his Primus stolen powers. But as anticipated, it was too much for Rodimus, and while he did succeed in saving Cybertron, he could not save himself. In the Dreamwave Generation 1 continuity, Arcee was seen working at a risky and unsafe materials treatment plant. Soon, she became a member of Hot Rod's secretive rebellion team, one that had its base in the Wastelands, while Shockwave was in control of things. Arcee's character was considered to be an odd one in the team, and it so happened that both Hot Rod and Springer fell for her. But no one was aware of the fact that Arcee was in reality not only a sleeper agent for the Quintessence, but also a member of the Elite One Squadron. Speaking of her task, her job was to observe the Autobot activity, the location of the Matrix of Leadership, as well as any Transformer with the affinity for the object. No wonder Arcee was absolutely thrilled when Optimus Prime was brought to the Underground Rebellion base. Also, the Dinobots at that time were making a complete mess of Iacon, and that led Shockwave releasing the Guardian robots, or in other words, the Omega Sentinels. This particular action forced all the rebels to make their final stand against Shockwave. Arcee paired up with Cup and Prowl, and this really bothered Hot Rod, as he could no longer keep a check on her. Despite the setbacks, the Autobots emerged victorious, and took back Iacon. A new Autobot base was set up in Iacon, but it goes without saying that both Hot Rod and Springer made the best use of their peacetime to win the affection of Arcee. As for Arcee herself, she was often seen lost in her thoughts, but she did share a few with Springer when he asked her, with Arcee stating to him that she was not sure of her objective in life and whether she actually belonged there on Cybertron. Springer made her certain that she belonged with her friends. Back at Quintessa, Arcee's overseers watched the entire proceedings on Cybertron with nothing but delight. After all, not only had they discovered another Transformer who had an affinity for the Matrix, and by that, we are stressing on Hot Rod, but also the fact that their very own agent Arcee was operating just the way they wanted her to. As planned, Arcee was chosen to leave along with Springer, Cup, and the Dinobots in order to set up a new moonbase. As for Hot Rod, he was selected for guard duty at Autobase, with Wheelie and Gnaw there to assist him. As per Arcee's report, the Quintessence led her colleagues for Hot Rod and the Matrix. In the G.I. Joe vs. the Transformers continuity, Arcee was sent to Earth along with Bumblebee, Perceptor, and Grimlock to supervise the decommissioning of all Cybertronian technology on the planet. After they reached Area 52, the entire facility was ambushed by Cobra. Arcee aided in the fight, and her presence took the surprise of Shanna O'Hara, also known as Scarlet. She did not know that female robots existed. Anyway, after hearing about some kind of a safety breach in the lower levels of Area 52, the whole group went there, and to Arcee's utter horror, she discovered that Bumblebee was not only wounded, but was also quite low on levels of energy. However, before the group could do anything, they were under attack by Serpentor, who immediately took control of the G.I. Joe's battle mechs and demanded that they fight the Autobots. Serpentor also brought the whole roof down on everybody, but luckily the Autobots and the Joes were both unharmed. They followed him through some kind of a warp gate to Cybertron and were ambushed by the vicious cannibalizers. Arcee suggests that they back away in order to safeguard the humans, and also promised Bumblebee that she would rotate his tires on the condition that Bumblebee outraces her. But then, to her horror, she bumped into Serpentor and his army, and no points for guessing that he pitilessly slaughtered Bumblebee and captured the others. But credit goes to their G.I. Joe friends that were ultimately able to escape from there. Upon hearing that Serpentor had taken Optimus Prime as a prisoner, Arcee, along with the others, reached his very chambers. There, they realized that it was Cobra Commander who had taken control of Serpentor's physical form, while he had laid hold of the Matrix of Leadership. No wonder Serpentor got the better of most of the Autobots, as well as the G.I. Joes with ease. It was only when Arcee was able to rip off the chest plate, which let Hawk take the Matrix, that she was able to overthrow him. Arcee was later seen shedding tears for Bumblebee at his memorial service. In the 2005 IDW continuity, Arcee was depicted as the twin sibling of the barbarian Galvatron. She was an ancient warrior who hailed from the prehistoric era, one that pre-existed before the modern Transformer civilization and served under the formidable dictator Megatronus. Arcee, in due course, approached the mad, immoral scientist, Jyaxus, for his help, and became a victim of his experiments. Jyaxus had his own plans of introducing the concept of gender within the Cybertronian race, but his heartless treatment ended up altering Arcee into a maddening maniac, and all she had in her mind was to exact revenge on her tormentor, which she did eventually. It was only when the Great War ended that Arcee started her journey towards recovery, and gradually she was able to work past her past demons, discover friendship, mutual trust, and also invest in her new role as the advisor of Optimus Prime. In fact, it was Arcee who played a key role in the battle against Unicron, before she settled down with Aileron. In the 2019 IDW continuity, Arcee had quite a dreaded personality, and in the beginning we might also add. She was greatly feared, especially during the conflict of the Threefold Spark. It was only after the war ended that Arcee chose the calm civilian life, and in due course fell in love with Green Light. But despite all this, she remained a proficient fighter, one with a short temper. After the death of Brainstorm, the Senate sanctioned a forging of a new Transformer, and Arcee was chosen to mentor the young Cybertronian. She, along with Green Light, met Gage, who happened to be their new ward at the customary ceremony at the Forge Pyramid in Iacon. And as time passed, Arcee became exceedingly protective about Gage. With tension brewing between the Autobots and the Ascensions, Greenlight originally proposed the idea of taking Gage off-world on an outgoing revisionist vessel, and while Arcee was initially hesitant about it, she eventually gave in. However, on board, a certain revisionist was not at all okay with the non-revisionists inside the ship. Therefore, he, along with a few other revisionists, coercively had Gage segregated from Arcee and Greenlight. Next, they reprogrammed Gage so as to make her forget everything, especially her old life with her mentors. But Greenlight knew very well that something wrong was about to take place. Therefore, he had already sent Gage a message asking her to come and find them. When Gage did what she was asked, he, along with Arcee, introduced themselves to her and told her that they wanted to tell her the truth. Resorting to a psychic patch, they were able to make Gage remember things and trust them in the process. Next, they had her deactivate the bars to their cage, and the starship returned to Cybertron. With the reversionists starting to attack the planet, Arcee, along with Greenlight, escaped the starship to warn the inhabitants of Cybertron of the forthcoming attack. After finally being able to incapacitate the reversionist Herotech, the trio decided to stay back on Cybertron.
You need to slow down. We're all anxious right now as it is.
Arcee in the Headmaster's cartoon series. In the year 2011, Arcee was put on duty at the Autobots' secondary command post on the planet Athenia. All of a sudden, an ancient and incredibly powerful supercomputer, Vector Sigma, started to destabilize. The computer began to intimidate the planet and open it up to an attack on the Decepticons and their latest Headmaster warriors. Arcee stayed back to hold down the fort while the other Autobots took part in the battle on Cybertron. An entity, one that looked like a star, was also headed towards the planet, and it was discovered that the object happened to be the gigantic spacecraft Maximus, which had on board Autobot headmasters from their homeworld, Master. Eventually, the Autobots, with their added strength, were able to defeat the Decepticons. Next, Optimus Prime got busy trying to destabilize Vector Sigma, and Arcee welcomed the Autobot headmasters to Athenia. It soon became clear that to bring Vector Sigma under control, they had to look for the missing matrix of leadership on Earth. With the Autobot headmaster commander, Fortress, declaring that he was going to help Optimus Prime in stabilizing the computer, Arcee, along with the others, decided to tag along. The matrix was finally recovered and made use of to stabilize the supercomputer, but all of this happened at the cost of the life of Optimus Prime, which meant Hot Rod was back to being the leader, Rodimus Prime. With the Decepticons launching another attack later on Cybertron so as to take control of Cybertone Neuron, the new alloy that the supercomputer had created, Arcee hurried back to the planet to join the battle along with Cup and Blur. The trio observed as Rodimus battled against Galvatron. To top it all off, they did not expect that the Decepticon headmaster leader, Scorponok, would actually end up using plasma energy bombs, wipe out Cybertron, and not wait for Galvatron to lay his hands on the Cybertronium. Rodimus left the leadership of Fortress and went away from there in search of a new homeworld for the Transformers. He was joined by Cup and Blur, and as for Arcee, she was instructed by Rodimus to stay behind and look after Daniel and Wheelie. Ultimately, it was Fortress's victory over Scorponok that led the Decepticons off of Earth and led the Autobots to start their cleanup operations and repair the damage caused to the planet. Arcee was also seen going back onto the battlefield for the first time in ages, we might add, when she joined all of the other Autobots' final battle against the Decepticons at the North Pole. The Autobots emerged victorious, and this drove the Decepticons away from Earth for good. Bidding farewell to Daniel, Carly, and Spike, she headed back into the space, along with the others, to continue the flight.
Command.
Arcee, you ready to launch?
We're locked and loaded.
Arcee in Transformers movie franchise. The Arcee on display might not have been the biggest of the toughest Autobots, but she surely did know how to pack a punch. We will begin with the 2009 live-action movie Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen, which happens to be the second installment in the film franchise. Arcee and her sisters were being in reserve. Nest was already in Shanghai to take care of the Decepticon Demolisher. The sisters were summoned after the presence of Sideways, and a second Decepticon was perceived. Arcee and her sisters were seen chasing the sly Decepticon through the very streets of Shanghai, destroying everything on their way. Later, with the Fallen announcing an ultimatum to Earth, the US government made up their mind to have the Autobots shipped back to Diego Garcia. However, Nest decided not to obey the orders and ship Arcee and her sisters to Egypt on the instruction of Sam Witwicky after learning that Sam had the means to revive the recently dead Optimus Prime. The sisters were seen arriving with Ironhide to aid Sam and his girlfriend Michaela through the war zone, but only after they had located Sam. Alita 1 was shot in the head by a Decepticon, resulting in her immediate death, and Arcee was next in line to receive a similar fate like her sister. Next, we'll be talking about the sixth installment in the film franchise titled Bumblebee, which showed Arcee putting up a great fight on Cybertron, along with the other Autobots, but their team was almost on the verge of being overrun. She was seen trying to contact the capital for more backup, and had it not been for the well-timed arrival of Optimus Prime, she, along with her colleagues, would have died for sure. Arcee in the upcoming movie Transformers: Rise of the Beasts. There is no denying that the 2018 movie Bumblebee, which was later announced to be a soft reboot of the franchise, so far has been the best live-action film in the entire series, despite the movie being the lowest-grossing flick amongst others. The upcoming Transformers movie is reported to be a sequel to Bumblebee, and a sheer treat for all the fans out there, as the film is bringing back a horde of fan-favorite characters. But we will be sticking to the character of Arcee, so here's everything we know about her in the upcoming flick. It is American influencer and comedian Lisa Koshy who is playing the role of the Autobot commando Arcee. While most Transformers usually like transforming into four-wheeled vehicles, when it comes to Arcee's character in the movie, her alternate mode is a red and white Ducati 916 motorcycle. Yes, you heard that right. Come on now, have you not seen the trailer yet? If you have, let us know about your thoughts about it in the comments below. Also, what are your thoughts on Arcee? If you enjoyed today's content today, make sure you leave us a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Until next time, I'm Rylan. Have a good one and be safe.
Allow me.